Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, where in today's video we are going to be continuing Dragon Ball World's Strongest. What if Wonder Woman was in Dragon Ball Part 4? But first, as always, if you are new to the channel or if you're a regular and you like what we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that's to come out now and in the future. Where we last left off with our series, we concluded the end of the Piccolo Jr. arc, but we still have a little bit left to go in the world of Dragon Ball before we cross over into the Z portion of the story. You could say that this is more of an epilogue to Dragon Ball than anything else, a way of wrapping up a certain saga in the whole of the Dragon Ball franchise, as we see the growing relationship between both Goku and Diana continue to blossom and bloom. But this will lead to changes a lot more than anyone could be anticipating. Changes that could have dire ramifications going down the line as we enter into the next portion of our story. But what will these changes be? And even more so, will the two strongest warriors on Earth be able to overcome what follows? For all this and more, stay tuned as we now continue Dragon Ball World's Strongest. What if Wonder Woman was in Dragon Ball Part 4? As always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Our story begins not too long after the events of the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai. For 2 years in a row, Diana, aka Wonder Woman, as she was known by the public, had earned 2 consecutive victories in the tournament's liking. As such, she was starting to gain a lot more popularity and notoriety out in the world. Of course, Diana didn't care much for fame or for fortune. She enjoyed being with her friends and with her family, and most of all, she enjoyed being with Goku. Although, it didn't stop her from going out from time to time out into the cities and other areas. You could say that this is where Diana's story of being Wonder Woman truly began, as from time to time she would go about stopping criminals and saving lives. That was just whenever she was in the area, the people beginning to hail her as a superhero of sorts, a champion of the people, not just the winner of the World Martial Arts Tournament. But still, this was done at a minimum. Even though she was now starting to gain a lot of notoriety and a lot of accommodation, she still kept her primary focus on the things that she enjoyed. Although she did like to help people, taking much more of the heroic aspect than anything else. But what about her relationship with Goku? Well, it remained strong. The two of them now having decided they were going to get married, but first they would have to make a stop. That stop being none other than Themyscira, where Wonder Woman would go to her home island and she would confront her mother. If you remember in the last story, Diana had made a deal that the only way she would be permitted to marry Son Goku was if she could defeat her mother in combat. Now, many were watching in anticipation for the fight, as the mother and daughter hadn't had so much as a spar in well over 6 years. However, much had changed from Diana's first excursion out into the world. For one, she had trained with many powerful and strong teachers, as well as fighting against some of the best that the world had to offer. Now, in this universe, the Amazons were created by the Kais, similar to their origin in our world about how the Amazons were created by the gods from Olympus, the goddess Aphrodite. However, the one thing about these version of Amazons is that when it came to their overall power, they preferred to use their skills in terms of combat and weaponry. Also, they weren't really versed in using ki in order to shoot off beam attacks. They more so used their ki to increase their physical strength, to fly, and to increase the power of the weapons and the tools that they used. Because of this, Diana actually had a leg up over her mother when it came to this endeavor. And when the two of them had their match, it was easy to see that Diana had surpassed her mother many times over. If her mother at her best was working with a power level of around 240, Diana had more than double that by now, already being in the mid 450s herself. Because of this, as the fight wore on, it was easy to see that Diana clearly held the edge. Before long, the two of their swords being knocked out of their hands, and Diana and her mother being forced to go blow for blow, it would result with Diana standing proud and tall, as she had gotten the victory. Goku, along with a few other of their friends, had been given special permission to sit in attendance with the others in the crowd and watch. Goku cheering Diana on, inspired by how she was able to fight and by just how strong she had become. With Diana's victory now secure, a celebration would be held. While technically this was a somber occasion, since Diana was pretty much exiling herself from the Amazonian culture, as to take a husband for herself would in fact be doing that very thing. They were still happy for her nonetheless, happy that she was walking down a path she wanted to. Of course, there was always the matter of who would potentially take over. Someone was going to have to be queen someday, and if Diana wasn't going to take up that role, would it be someone else? And for Diana to have children, were they privy to have any royal treatment? All these questions were things that would have to be answered soon enough. And it wouldn't take too long, as both Diana and Goku would be married not too long after. The wedding would be beautiful. It would be held on the Amazonian island of Themyscira, in a beautiful garden, where both Goku and Diana would be wed together. They would still go on to have their home, similar to the one Goku had in the original timeline, although it would be a little bit different. With help from the other Amazons, and with some decent fortune on their side, they were able to build a home that was not too big, but comfortable, to say the least. Between the resources that they had both acquired from competing in the World Martial Arts Tournament, as well as from Diana and the provisions she were given before she left, their family was pretty well off, to say the least. And just like in the original timeline, about 1 year after their being together, they would add a new addition to their family, that being in Gohan. However, this version of Gohan would be a lot different. In terms of look and appearance, this version of Gohan would look about the same, although his eye color, that would be a key distinction from the original Gohan that we've seen. Gohan's eye color would actually be a bright blue, very much like his mother's, and we would see that he had the hair that he inherited from his father, as well as the feature of having a monkey's tail. Yes, this version of Gohan would be half Amazon, half Saiyan. Needless to say that the potential of this child would be something far greater than anyone could possibly imagine. And also, unlike before, Gohan would be raised a lot differently than he was in the original timeline, primarily because of the fact that Chi-Chi would not be his mother in this story. Diana would be more balanced with raising Gohan. You see, because just like Goku, Diana would be born in a society that was different from the norms of the world that they lived in. You could say that just as Goku is a child of nature, so is Diana. So there wouldn't be this big push or this big need to want to force Gohan to study. Gohan's tutelage would come through the means of nature itself. Gohan would know the basics, such as reading and writing, and knowing how to take care of himself. But there wouldn't be this overemphasis on education or for him to try to reach the heights of being a scholar. Instead, Gohan would be given a loving home and he would be allowed to choose what sort of life he wanted to live. But of course, we would still be a few years off from that, as he would only be about 2 years old once 3 years' time would have elapsed, and the 24th World Martial Arts Tournament would be upon us. At this point in the timeline, the 24th World Martial Arts Tournament would be in the middle of the time skip from the end of Dragon Ball to the start of Z. As such, you could say that this would be the final calling call for everything that was Dragon Ball to begin with. Many of the Z fighters would gather together as Goku and Diana made it clear that they still wanted to participate. Bulma would arrive along with Master Roshi, Krillin, and even Yamcha and Tien and Chaozu as well. All of them now being privy to seeing baby Gohan a lot sooner than they did in the original timeline. Also, Piccolo Jr. would have arrived here as well, as he wanted an opportunity to challenge against Diana again. Piccolo had mellowed out a lot more after his encounter with the Amazon, after the lasso of truth was forced upon him and he was forced to confront his own innermost feelings. The simple fact that, deep down, he truly wasn't evil. At least none of his actions were corresponding with his attitude. He was grumpy, but he didn't display any evil tendencies. Still though, everyone made sure to keep their eyes on him to make sure that he stayed on the straight and narrow. Before long, the World Martial Arts Tournament would be underway. Now, for those of you who might be unaware, this is actually the first tournament that Hercule ever won, the tournament that started his rise to fame. However, things were going to take a dramatic change this time around. For one, even though Hercule would make it to the finals, things would not go as easy for him as you might have expected. The final 8 would of course be Goku, as well as Diana, along with Piccolo, Krillin, Tien, Yamcha, Hercule, and Chi-Chi. Yes, Chi-Chi was here as well, but she had a fierce look on her face. She was not too thrilled to see Goku, and she was definitely not too thrilled to see Diana either. With the final 8 now selected, they would advance to the first round, and the matchups would play as follows. In the first round, we would see Goku versus Krillin, Piccolo Jr. versus Tien, Diana versus Hercule, and Chi-Chi versus Yamcha. To go over the first round, Goku versus Krillin would be an amazing callback to the match that was had in the 22nd World Martial Arts Tournament, when Goku and Krillin met in the first round then. Just like before, Goku and Krillin would go at it just like they had back in the past. Krillin had been training, unlike in the original, with a lot more intensity as everyone was competing in this tournament, whereas everyone had a layoff for about 5 years and trained sparsely. Now the training was a bit more intensified. Here, Krillin would try to pull out all the stops against Goku, and the two of them would have a decent back and forth, but ultimately Goku would get the better of Krillin and would knock him out of the ring, getting the victory and advancing to the semifinals. The second match was where we really saw a lot of intensity. That would be Piccolo Jr. versus Tien. There would be some harboring feelings between the two. After all, Tien had been on the receiving end of a terrible beating from Piccolo Jr.'s father, King Piccolo, and Piccolo Jr. was very much aware of this. While the two of them wouldn't speak very much to one another out loud, they would let their action do the talking. Tien would push Piccolo a great deal, forcing the Green Warrior to have to actually give it his all to a degree. The fighting would be intense, and sometimes even a little brutal, but through their fighting, they were able to gain a level of respect for one another. Ultimately though, Piccolo Jr. would get the victory over Tien and would advance to the semifinals to face Goku. Now, the third match would be a bit more comical than anything else. You see, unlike in the original timeline, where Hercule was pretty much able to cruise to a victory with ease, as there was no one in this tournament that would have been able to challenge him, he was now fighting against the two-time winner, Hercule proclaiming that he was going to get the better effort this time around, and that his time to shine would be here. However, for Hercule, that would not be the case at all. Diana would effortlessly deflect every attack that he could throw at her before she casually threw him out of the ring. This actually does a lot more damage than you might suspect, mainly being that instead of Hercule being able to use the World Martial Arts Tournament as a potential launching pad for his career, instead it actually becomes his detriment, as instead of being seen as the world champion and as a world-class winner, he pretty much gets embarrassed and knocked out in the first round, basically becoming a laughingstock. Finally, in the fourth match of the first round, we would see Chi-Chi versus Yamcha. Yamcha would give it his all as he fought against Chi-Chi. However, this time around though, Chi-Chi would be a lot more ferocious in her attacks against Yamcha. This mainly coming from the fact that Chi-Chi had undergone a rather strange change during the last 3 years. Remember, Chi-Chi wanted revenge against Diana for taking away her Goku. This left her to search out for power in any way that she could. She ended up finding her way to the desert, where she met with the famed witch herself, fortune teller Baba, and asked if she could be given power that would allow her to fight against Diana. With Baba looking into her crystal ball, she was able to find something that would be up Chi-Chi's alley, unleashing her inner beast. This would be in the form of allowing her to channel a beast-like animal and cause it to give her a transformation, one that she could hone as a power for herself. Because of this, in our universe, Chi-Chi is actually the cheetah, the famed arch nemesis of Wonder Woman. Using her power, Chi-Chi would reveal that she had a tail, a lot similar to the one that Goku had when he was a kid, although Chi-Chi's tail would be a cheetah's tail. She would use her abilities to transform from her human form to her cheetah form. Her claws would grow, as well as her senses and her monstrous strength. But her real asset would be her speed, as she was able to blitz Yamcha repeatedly, striking him multiple times before eventually folding him and knocking him out of the ring. Yamcha lost more so due to the fact that he wasn't really paying all that much attention, but even still, he kind of felt that this was a bit embarrassing. Although, things might have only seemed to go from bad to worse, primarily being in the sense that Chi-Chi was now on a collision course with Diana. As we would enter into the semi-finals, Goku would face off against Piccolo, this being the first time that the two of them would actually get to fight, as they didn't get to fight in the 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament. However, this version of Piccolo is a lot different from before, a lot more closer to his Z counterpart, although he wasn't quite there yet. He was still hostile, but he wasn't overly aggressive. Goku and Piccolo would go on to have an amazing fight, similar to the one that they had in the original timeline in the 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament. Only still, this time around, Goku would just narrowly get the victory over Piccolo, fighting on the sheer determination to make it to the finals, where he would want to face off against his wife, Diana. And speaking of Diana, she and Chi-Chi would meet in the semi-finals, a rematch from the first round of the last tournament. Chi-Chi was furious. Not only had Diana married Goku, but they had had a child together. Chi-Chi's jealousy was at an all-time high, causing her cheetah form to be at its max potential. She was filled with anger and rage towards Diana for taking away what she felt was rightfully hers. However, Diana would start to become a bit annoyed by this. The idea that Chi-Chi was still hung up over something that wasn't really real to begin with. Of course, Chi-Chi didn't see it that way, and her fist made it quite known. Chi-Chi was adept to fighting on all fours, as well as fighting on her feet, moving a lot like a cheetah would in the prowl. As the two of them fought, it became very clear that when it came to speed, Chi-Chi had the advantage. Diana had the strength and the endurance to withstand flurries of attack, but Chi-Chi was relentless. The fight seemed to stalemate for a moment, and there were even a few times when some thought that Diana might be eliminated. Chi-Chi could feel herself getting close. As she went in for the final strike, however, Diana would counter as the two of them would collide in the center of the arena. While the fight was even for some time, ultimately it would start to favor Diana. The main reason being is that Chi-Chi had made a mistake. Similar to Golden Frieza in Dragon Ball Super, Chi-Chi wasn't all that adept with using her new form, meaning she couldn't maintain it for a long enough period of time before it started to drain away at her overall ki, causing her power level to diminish a lot more faster the longer she extended using it. As a result, Diana was ultimately able to outlast her, defeating her and getting the victory as she would advance to the finals. Chi-Chi would look back towards them, angered about her loss, but Diana would explain that things didn't have to be this way, and that she should have to learn to accept that things were the way that they were. Chi-Chi, however, would not be too fond about this, as she was preparing to storm off and leave, as she didn't really want to hear any more of it. She wasn't sure of what she was going to do, but she knew that she could just never forgive Diana for taking away the life that she felt could have been hers. It was a sad reality, as she had become more and more isolated from the people who could have potentially have been her friends. Now, Chi-Chi was the odd person out, to say the least, from the rest of the Z Fighters. Maybe she would return back to her home and continue to train, or maybe she'd give up her ambitions and continue her life as a princess to the Ox King, her father. Well, that's just something that we would have to see in due time. In the meanwhile, the main event was set to take place: Goku versus Wonder Woman. A matchup that was one for the ages, husband versus wife. Goku and Diana looked at one another in the arena, the crowd cheering on as they knew that this was going to be a fight for the ages. A rematch of the 22nd World Martial Arts Tournament Finals, now here at the 24th. Bulma was holding on to a baby Gohan, who was looking out and in awe of watching both his mother and father preparing to duke it out. The two of them would begin their fight, as they went back with one another, the both of them showing how much they had learned over their years spent together training and growing. The two of them were able to hold their own tremendously, Goku even starting to pick up on the ability to fly, and now being able to match her. And Diana, she could feel this. Every punch was intense, and they could tell that neither one was holding back. Even Roshi could feel the magnitude. These were two of the strongest warriors on Earth, in a clash that was going to be one for the ages. As the two of them continued on, fighting all the way, even into the early evening itself, as the sun started to set, the two of them could feel that they were pretty much all but spent, and they knew that the next attack that they threw might potentially be their last. In a bit of a recreation of how their first fight ended, Diana would move over to one edge of the arena, and Goku, picking up what she was putting down, would walk to the edge of the other side as well. You remember how our first fight ended, don't you, Goku? Yeah, how can I forget? It was a fight to the finish, I'd say. Well, I think we both know that neither one of us have too much power left to give. So, how about we go down memory lane one more time? Diana held up her arms together as she removed both of her bracelets, the both of them cracking onto the concrete arena floor as she held up her arms. She bellowed forth, telling Goku that if he was going to win, he had to give it his all and force her out. She dug her feet down, not ready to be moved, not even for a moment. Goku, also looking to acquire, would step back as he launched the most powerful of Kamehameha waves as he could, the beam colliding straight to Diana as she tried to hold it off. The crowd watched as the two of them struggled, Goku trying to use his power to force her out, and Diana standing tall like a mountain, completely immovable and unstoppable. It was going to be a fight to the finish, and it was going to come down simply to who wanted it more. For Diana, she had been at this for 2 years running, the first time by chance, but the second time by choice. She wasn't sure how much longer she would be competing in these tournaments, but she figured, why not go out as a 3-time winner? That was gonna be the highlight for her career, to end it with a three-peat. And as for Goku, he was hungering with thirst for victory. So many times, it seemed to elude him, and now it was just within his grasp, and he wasn't going to let go. Goku and Diana would warn the people behind them to move out of the way. The people in the crowd doing so. Even Bulma, Roshi, and Baby Gohan were looking to take cover, as a final flash would shine throughout the arena, and a large wave of energy would flow in every direction. As the announcer slowly made his way back to the arena, he looked to see who was still left standing. Goku, on wobbly knees, would have his hand raised high, while Diana, in half of the ring, was gone, and she had been knocked out into the stands. Goku had just barely been able to push past. He had gotten the victory, and he would be the winner of the 24th Tenkaichi Budokai. After the fight, Goku would rush over to Diana, helping her on her feet, as the two of them were given applause for their performance. And for Goku, he was feeling even more chipper. After all of the trials and errors, after all the failures he had received, he had now finally won his first World Martial Arts Tournament. And for Diana, she was happy. She was proud that her husband had come so far, and she didn't mind losing to him. Although she definitely wanted a rematch, but she was prepared to wait for that, at least for now. With the tournament now over, the Sun family would make their way home. And for another 2 years, peace and prosperity would reign over the earth. Goku and Diana would grow together, train together, and they would be an even better family. As young Gohan was taking his first steps as well, he followed in the footsteps of his mother and father. Whether it would be meditating in the morning by a waterfall, or the family going out for a picnic, or for them to just enjoy a nice flight over the earth, all three of them sitting together on the Nimbus cloud as they watched the full moon rise above. That was kind of an issue, as both Goku and Diana had to learn the hard way. Thankfully, when they last saw the full moon, all three of them were in an area where there were no civilians and no one to get hurt. And Goku and Diana basically played a rather dangerous game of tag with Gohan until the sun came up and the boy turned back into his normal state. The both of them agreeing that maybe they should go to sleep before the moon comes out. But eventually, the time would come. After 2 years apart, it was time for another reunion at Kame House. Goku was setting out, along with Diana and with little Gohan by his side. The three would call out to Flying Nimbus as they hopped on together, and they arrived to the island of the Turtle Hermit. As they were there, they would be greeted by both Bulma, along with Master Roshi, and Krillin as well. There were some others who had been invited, but they were probably not going to make it. But in the midst of their merriment and in their joy, there would be a loud cry from outer space. A pod would come streaking through the sky as it landed and crashed into the ground. Inside of this pod was a warrior from another world who had finally come after a long time. He had come to the planet that his brother had been sent to on his birth. And it was time to bring Kakarot home. This concludes What If Wonder Woman Was in Dragon Ball? Dragon Ball World's Strongest, Part 4. As always, if you enjoyed today's video and everything else that we have to offer here on the channel, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcasting that's to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we continue Neon Genesis Evangelion Redemption, Book 1, Part 4. What if Shinji went back in time? But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.